Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine standing in front of a crowd, holding a plate of food, while the person you once loved makes a cruel joke about you, loud enough for everyone to hear. Your heart races, your hands shake, but you pretend it doesn't hurt. You have to, for the sake of your child. But what happens when that child, the one you've been trying so hard to protect, finds the courage to speak the truth when you can't? This is a story about shame, silence, and the unexpected power of a child's voice. It's about finding strength in moments when you think you have nothing left. Stay with us as we explore how one mother's journey of survival takes an unexpected turn and how her son's bravery becomes the catalyst for change. Let's dive into the story. Jenna held the paper plate in her hands, the edges of the ribs cooling under the late afternoon sun. She could feel the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders, heavier than the meat she was trying to swallow. The backyard was full of chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the sound of laughter, but it all felt like a distant hum, an echo from a world she didn't belong to. Her son, Jake, was off somewhere, playing with his cousins, his laughter cutting through the air with an innocence that felt miles away from the sharpness of the situation she found herself in. It was supposed to be a simple family barbecue, the kind of event she'd hesitated to attend, but Jake had begged her. He missed his cousins. He wanted to be part of their world, even if that world had always been a place where she was never truly welcome. She'd tried to shield him from it, tried to keep the hurt, the coldness of their stares, the whispered judgments, so many whispered judgments, away from him. But she knew. He always knew. Jenna could feel the eyes on her as she moved through the crowd. There was Chad, her ex-husband, greeting people with his usual fake warmth, that grin he wore like a mask, making sure everyone saw the version of him he wanted them to. He didn't acknowledge her, not really. His attention was always on the things he wanted to show off. The expensive grill, the perfectly manicured lawn, the illusion of a perfect life. It made her stomach churn, but she'd learned long ago how to keep her emotions in check, how to bury them deep. For Jake, she told herself, she had to hold it together for him. Then there was Carol, Chad's mother, perched on the deck with a glass of sangria in hand. She waved at Jake with a tight-lipped smile, then turned to gossip with the others, a half-sneer tugging at her lips. Jenna could feel the sting of her presence, like a cold wind cutting through the warmth of the evening. Carol had always been this way, sharp, cutting, her words wrapped in the thinnest veil of politeness, just enough to make them sting without leaving marks. "Well, at least she can deliver the child on time," Carol said, her voice carrying over the yard like it was a compliment. Jenna tried to pretend she hadn't heard. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time, it felt different. She could feel the heat rise in her face, the familiar sting of humiliation washing over her, but this time, she was determined not to let it show. Her hands shook, and the plate nearly slipped from her grip, but she kept her head up, focusing on Jake, who was now running through the sprinkler with his cousins, his laughter ringing in her ears. He was so happy. That was all that mattered. But then the moment came. Jenna didn't see it at first. 1 second, Jake was playing, blending into the group of kids like he always did. The next, he was climbing onto the white plastic chair in the middle of the yard. The sound of laughter quieted as he stood there, his small figure almost trembling, not from fear, but from something else, something Jenna couldn't quite place. She saw Chad look over, his usual grin fading into a look of confusion. But Jenna couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Jake's voice cut through the silence. "Grandma," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I have something Dad doesn't want you to know." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a child's innocent comment. It was deliberate, quiet, and with a certainty that made the air around them shift. The crowd grew still, all eyes on Jake as he stood there, his small fists clenched at his sides, his eyes locked on Carol. Chad moved toward him quickly, the fake smile still plastered on his face, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Come on, buddy, let's get down from there," he said, his voice forced, too sweet. But Jake didn't budge. Instead, he repeated himself. "Grandma," he said again, his voice clearer, firmer this time, "I have something Dad doesn't want you to know." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "Let the boy speak," Carol said, trying to regain control of the situation, but there was a tremor in her voice now, something Jenna had never heard before. It wasn't the sneer she was used to. There was something else, something she couldn't place. Jenna felt her heart race as she watched Jake stand there, not crying, not angry, just determined. This wasn't just about him speaking up. This was about something bigger. And when Jake spoke again, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife, it was like the world stopped spinning for just a moment. "Daddy says mean things about Mommy on the phone when he thinks I'm sleeping," Jake said, his voice steady, his eyes never leaving Carol's. "He says she's useless and broke, and that she ruined everything." A few people gasped, their faces flashing with shock, but Jenna was frozen. The world felt like it was collapsing around her. Chad stood there, his face turning red as he opened his mouth, then shut it again, unable to find the words. It wasn't the anger that Jenna felt in that moment, though. It was relief. The kind of relief that only comes when the truth, no matter how painful, finally breaks free. Jake stepped down from the chair, walking back to her, his little face calm, as though nothing had happened. But Jenna knew. He had just given her something she had never had before. Permission. Permission to stop hiding, to stop pretending that silence was better than the truth. As they walked toward the gate, leaving the barbecue behind, Jenna could feel the eyes on her, but for the first time, she didn't care. She wasn't walking out in shame. She was walking out with her head high, with Jake by her side. And for the first time in years, she felt like she had reclaimed something that had been lost. Have you ever felt silenced by someone you loved? How did you find the strength to speak up? What do you think happens next for Jake and Jenna? How will their lives change after this powerful moment? Stay tuned for the next chapter to see how they navigate this new reality. Jenna hadn't expected the silence to follow her for so long. After the confrontation at the barbecue, after Jake had said what he said, she thought things would immediately feel different. But instead, there was a weight, a thick, suffocating kind of silence that followed them home, even after they'd left the backyard, the judgmental stares, and the murmurs of the crowd behind. Jake had been unusually quiet the whole ride back. Jenna had noticed it, but she didn't push him. She let him be, letting the quiet between them speak for itself. His small hand was still clutching hers tightly as they walked toward the front door, and as they entered their home, there was a sense of something unsettled, something both comforting and troubling all at once. "Mom?" Jake's voice cut through the silence as they stood in the hallway, the weight of the house pressing in on them. His eyes were wide, vulnerable, still holding that calmness that had shocked the entire backyard. Jenna knelt down, meeting his gaze. She had been holding her breath for a while now, trying not to exhale the tension that lingered in her chest. "Yeah, buddy?" she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. She wanted to ask how he felt, if he was okay, but the words felt too heavy, too demanding. "Why did I do that?" Jake asked, his voice small, unsure. "Why did I say those things?" Jenna's heart twisted. It wasn't because he regretted it. No, it was the weight of what he had uncovered, the hurt he had let spill out into the world, and the guilt he felt for exposing the truth. "Jake," she whispered, "you did it because you knew it was the right thing to do. You had the courage to speak when others wouldn't. And sometimes, that's all we can do." He nodded slowly, but there was still a trace of doubt in his eyes. "But what if I made everything worse? What if they get mad at you? Or what if I'm not supposed to say things like that?" Jenna's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. She wanted to protect him from the harshness of the world, but there was no denying the truth that had come spilling out. It wasn't just about what they'd said about her, or the hurt she'd endured. It was about him, too. It was about how, for the first time, he had seen things clearly. He hadn't just been a passive observer to the pain. He'd taken a step into the fray, and now the lines were blurred. The world was different, not just for him, but for her as well. She cupped his face in her hands, her fingers trembling slightly as she looked into his eyes. "Jake, sometimes the truth hurts, but you have to trust that you did the right thing. We can't always protect ourselves from the hard things, but we can face them together." He looked at her, a frown creasing his brow. "I don't want to make you sad anymore, Mom. I didn't mean to." Jenna shook her head quickly, her voice firm. No, baby. You didn't make me sad. You gave me something I didn't even know I needed. You gave me strength. But as she said it, she knew that she was lying to herself. She had been hiding behind her own silence for so long that now, in the aftermath of Jake's words, she was facing a truth she had been avoiding for years. She had hidden so much from him. So much pain, so many battles fought in the dark, hoping he wouldn't notice. She had played the part of the strong, silent mother, shielding him from everything. But now, everything was out in the open. The phone buzzed on the counter, the sharp sound cutting through the silence of the room. Jenna didn't need to look at the screen. She already knew who it was. Chad. She picked up the phone without a second thought, her fingers trembling as she answered. Jenna? His voice was cold, sharp, like it always was when he was cornered. You need to control your son. This isn't something you should have allowed to happen. Her heart clenched at the words, but she didn't flinch. You want me to control him? She said, her voice rising. Is that what you think this is about? This isn't about control, Chad. This is about the truth. The truth that you've been hiding from everyone, including yourself. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Jenna wondered if he had hung up. But then he spoke again, his voice softer, almost pleading. This is all your fault. You've poisoned him. You've made him think that it's okay to hurt people, to spill everything. No, she interrupted, her voice steady now. I didn't poison him, Chad. You did that, and you're too blind to see it. She could hear him muttering on the other end, but she didn't let him finish. She wasn't going to let him spin this anymore. Not for her, not for Jake. Stop pretending that you're the victim here, Jenna said, her voice a whisper, but it felt like the loudest thing she had ever said. You've spent our entire marriage convincing everyone that I was the problem, that I was the one who ruined everything. But it wasn't me, Chad. It was you. She hung up before he could respond, before the usual string of manipulative words could seep through the phone. The weight of the conversation sat heavily on her chest, but for the first time, it wasn't the shame that was crushing her. It was something else, a feeling of liberation, like she had finally broken free of the chains she had been holding onto for so long. Jake was standing beside her now, his eyes wide with something she hadn't seen before. Pride. Mom, he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. You did the right thing. And in that moment, Jenna realized it wasn't just her son who needed her strength. It was her, too. For the first time in years, she was looking at herself in the mirror, no longer afraid of what she might see. How far will Jenna go to protect Jake? And what does this newfound strength mean for their future? Chad's manipulation might have broken her once, but now she's stronger than ever. Will Jenna continue to fight for her son's future, or will the consequences of her actions tear their world apart? Stay tuned for the next chapter to find out. Jenna stood at the window, her hands resting on the cool glass, watching as the world outside continued on. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn, the same lawn where everything had changed just a few days ago. She had never felt more alive, more real, than she did in that moment. But the reality of what had happened, what she had unleashed, was beginning to settle in. She had stood up for herself, for Jake, and for the truth. The weight of it was still there, heavy, but it felt like something she could carry now, something she no longer had to hide from. Yet, as much as she felt empowered, there was a quiet, lingering question that refused to leave her mind. What now? Jake had gone to bed hours ago, his small body curled up in his bed, his breathing soft and steady. She had kissed him goodnight, just like every night, but tonight there was something different in the way he held on to her, something tighter, something more desperate. She had been worried, yes, but now, as she stared out at the empty yard, she realized that the true battle hadn't just been won for him. It had been won for her, too. It was around midnight when the knock came. Jenna didn't need to check who it was. The feeling in the pit of her stomach told her everything. She opened the door, her pulse quickening, but she stood her ground, not backing away. Carol stood there, holding a small bag of muffins in her hand. The same bag, Jenna remembered. The one she had left at the doorstep earlier. Her posture was different now, small, uncertain. The same woman who had mocked her so cruelly just days ago, now standing in front of her with an unspoken apology hanging in the air between them. I I brought these for Jake, Carol said, her voice shaking slightly. I know he likes the blueberry ones. Jenna didn't know how to respond at first. Part of her wanted to slam the door in Carol's face, to scream, to demand an apology that she knew she would never get. But then she saw it, the vulnerability in Carol's eyes. The same eyes that had once looked at her with disdain, now filled with something Jenna couldn't quite place. Jenna took a deep breath and stepped aside, motioning for Carol to come in. The silence between them was thick, but not in the way it had been before. It wasn't just uncomfortable. It was heavy with the possibility of something changing. Jake's asleep, Jenna said quietly as they both walked into the kitchen. But you can leave them on the counter. Carol nodded, her gaze flickering to the empty chair at the table. Jenna could feel the tension still crackling in the room, like there was something else Carol was trying to say, but couldn't quite get out. Why did you come? Jenna asked after a long pause, her voice steady but filled with a quiet curiosity. Carol swallowed hard, glancing at Jenna. I didn't mean what I said. I've spent so many years hiding behind. I thought I was protecting Max, you know? I thought if I tore you down, it would make everything easier, but I see now it didn't. It just made everything worse. Jenna didn't know what to say. There was something raw in Carol's voice that made her want to soften, but she knew better now. The truth couldn't be avoided, and neither could the consequences of their actions. Jenna had spent too long protecting everyone else to feel sorry for Carol now. You can't just erase what you did, Jenna said, her voice firm. You can't just apologize and expect it to go away. I don't want to hear the excuses. I want to see the change, and that's up to you, Carol, not me. Carol's face crumpled slightly, and for the first time, Jenna saw the cracks in the facade. I know, she whispered, the words almost too quiet to hear. But I'm trying, for him and for you. The moment hung between them, and Jenna realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit before. She was done waiting for validation, for apologies that would never come. She was done pretending that what she had been through didn't matter. It did. It always had. Then show him, Jenna said softly. Show him that you've changed, and if you want to rebuild something, do it from a place of honesty, not manipulation. Carol nodded, slowly, as if the weight of those words were finally settling in. Jenna watched as she left the kitchen, placing the bag of muffins gently on the counter. There was no fanfare, no grand gestures, just a woman finally starting to understand the depth of her actions. And for once, Jenna didn't feel the need to carry the burden of forgiveness. As the door closed behind Carol, Jenna felt something shift inside her. A shift that wasn't just about the moment, but about the future. About what came next. The next morning, when Jake woke up, he padded into the kitchen, his eyes still heavy with sleep. He glanced at the muffins on the counter, then at Jenna, who was sitting at the table, watching him with a soft smile. Mom, did Grandma come by? He asked, his voice quiet. Jenna nodded, but she didn't need to say anything. Jake could see it in her eyes. He knew. He always knew. Did she say sorry? Jake asked after a beat. She's trying, Jenna said, her voice thick with emotion. And that's a good start. Jake smiled, the same innocent smile that had once broken Jenna's heart, but now filled her with pride. Maybe she'll be different now. Maybe, Jenna whispered, reaching over to squeeze his hand. But we don't need her to be different, Jake. We've got all we need right here. And as they sat there together in the quiet of the morning, Jenna realized something. She had been afraid of losing herself for so long, afraid that the truth would break everything, but it hadn't. It had set her free. And now, there was nothing left to fear. How did you feel about Jenna's journey of healing and forgiveness? Did you find the ending satisfying, or did it leave you wanting more? If you love this story, type 100 in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let us know your country in the comments. If you think someone else could benefit from hearing this story, share this video with them. Thanks for watching Life Stories.